1, 2, 3, 4. Well, you got it.
Hi, my name is Neal Unsworth. I'm the manager of Parks and Shoreline in the Engineering Services Department, and I'm going to tell you more about city parks.
Hello, my name is Rob Hosier, and I'm your host of Tell Me More, the City of Kingston podcast. Joining me is Neal Unsworth, who you heard off the top, and Paul Whittingham, our producer. And while we three find ourselves deep in City Hall in the Councillor's Lounge, windowless, I believe, here at Paul, because we need the acoustics, but outside, summer has officially arrived, and our community is booming. Live shows, markets in the square, festivals and celebrations, not to mention all the incredible patios to visit. We were just at one last night. There's so much to do in Kingston year-round, but especially in these summer months. And one of my favorite places to visit with my family is our local park. Kingston is actually home to more than 230 parks.
230?
230, Paul. Small parks that provide a place to take your kids after the workday is done, parks to play sports in, and parks like Lake Ontario Park that can absolutely make you fall in love with our fair city and waterfront. Shortly, we'll welcome back to the mic Neal Unsworth, manager of the city's Parks and Shoreline Division and Engineering Services, to learn more about what our parks mean to different people, how they're built and refreshed, about Neal's favorite park project, spoiler alert, and an upcoming engagement. So grab your earbuds, lather on some sunscreen, and you know what, Paul? For this episode, we highly recommend listening to it at the park. Talk to you soon. I'd like to recognize Kingston is on the traditional homeland and territory of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat. And thank you to these nations for their care and stewardship. A little about me. I'm originally from the BC Lower Mainland, and my ancestry is Irish-English. Neal, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here today. But before we get into what you and your team work on, tell me more about you. How long have you been with the city and what brought you here?
I've been here 12 years. Thanks, Rob. I came from the GTA after 12 years of working there in the same field. But this is my hometown, and a friend noticed the job and said, why don't you look at moving back to your hometown and bring some of your knowledge from our works in Toronto, back to Kingston. I had a great mentor there in landscape architecture, and we did a lot of parks.
Very
so
cool.
When I came here, I looked at some of the really exciting progressive parks and open space planning that had started in Kingston. And I was attracted to kind of the skills within Kingston's organization. So in particular, Lake Ontario Park Master Plan had been underway for a couple of years, and managing a really complicated public consultation process was something I was very attracted to.
Right.
And they'd also just renovated the Springer Market Square, which I knew the designer of that project, and I'd been keeping an eye on it just from an interest sake perspective, being a bit of a local. And I thought, well, if I can go to a city that can do those two projects, what else could we do?
I like that criteria. And so it sounds like you're from Kingston, did your time in Toronto, as I'd say, from Kingston, and then you arrive back here and in a perfect time to tackle some of these projects. And we're so happy to have you here, obviously. But rumor has it that you can actually sketch a park concept on a scrap of paper in no time at all. Is that correct?
I love to draw. I always have. I'm not very good at it. I go way too fast, and my people look like upside down horseshoes with heads on. But I understand how public spaces work and they function, and the technical side of that. And most importantly, the scale is a huge part of understanding parks. That's why I try to explore that with sketches. I'm actually still on the same markers that I had when I came here 12 years ago.
We actually have a scrap of paper here, Paul, that we can get. This will be awesome for the audio format. You'll enjoy this. I'm just joking. That's amazing. And scale is obviously in your business is key. In your mind, we'll go to a really kind of a general question. What makes a great park? And so when we're talking about this, what kind of ingredients go into that park? And are there any elements that would actually surprise people?
Absolutely. I think it would be quite surprising and maybe a little bit of a letdown to know that nothing that's actually in the park is what makes a great park. So very most important thing about the park is its surroundings.
Okay.
That all starts when the land planning and the real estate stage is done, and it's long before any designer puts pen to paper on the actual park improvements. So big, broad street frontages and great visibility and a good land configuration and a prominent location in the community, that's the cornerstone of a great park. Think of City Park and McBurney and Victoria and Churchill. They'd be great even if they didn't have any paths or swing sets in them.
Right.
The next thing in the recipe is the landscape. So you grade the site thoughtfully and you plant the trees and you care for the land with good maintenance, and the park will always work and people will always appreciate that open space.
Right.
Essentially, what makes it great is the location, and that it's public and that it's outdoors.
Yeah.
And the amenities, they all can come later.
Absolutely. I like the idea of the recipe for a park, and that makes a lot of sense. And it seems like recently, everyone and literally their dog were at the park during the pandemic. Did you see kind of a renaissance during the pandemic? Like maybe people are rediscovering parks again?
Sort of. I'd say that we were already in a big revival period for public spaces and parks. This is across all of North America. There's a huge wave of interest in from the public in parks during Victorian times and in the 60s. And then there was a little wave in the 90s. But for the last 10 to 15 years, we've seen a really strong wave of renewed interest in parks.
Great.
It comes primarily from growing cities and our economy, but also from the change in generational values. And a little bit practically, it comes from aging infrastructure. So those earlier waves of park improvements, they led to subsequent ones because the new stuff gets old, and that's pretty common for all public infrastructure. During the pandemic, we did see a lot of extra interest in the parks, specifically as places that were social and emotional escapes when we were locked down. I felt really proud to be part of that, even just a little bit. And I took my family to the parks too. And it was really a special thing for people who were isolated at that time. So if you were alone in your home, I can't begin to tell you the number of times I've seen people in the parks feeling a little bit normal during the pandemic when they had no one else other than perhaps someone on, FaceTime. The same time that hit us, we had two of the hottest summers in history.
That's right.
And the parks helped us escape some of that heat as well. So there was some social heat, but there was also some actual physical heat. And it was essential for those that were stuck in hot offices or warehouses that didn't have AC.
Right.
Schools don't have air conditioning usually.
Right.
Apartments that are non-air conditioned, and even those who are stuck outside all day with no escape from the climate. People use the parks in the evenings to cool down.
Yeah.
And that really, really, I'm hoping, helped people feel better and safer. And I think that'll likely, whether it's social issues or viruses in the future or just climate change alone, I think the parks will take on a really bigger role as we go on. And we just have to adapt to all of those new things in our world.
Very well put, and thinking of the park as your third place in your life, and having a more prominent position, and myself, and I think Paul too, talking about this during the pandemic, and just recognizing what it is that you have there, and really appreciating it when you're not as distracted maybe by life in general during those lockdown times. Okay, so we got to get to the controversial question for you, and you have to say, and this might cause controversies back in the office and things like that. So you're going out on a limb here. I understand that. Neal, tell me what your favorite park is in the city. Now you need to choose one. That's not this top three, anything like that. And then why?
It's an easy answer, and
easy one.
You're probably not going to be able to like it, but I love them all. I love the open spaces, and I love each park. There are some of them a little more than others.
Sure.
They're all very unique. Some of them are natural spaces, and some of them are urban spaces, and some of them are for recreation, and some of them are just for just enjoying the waterfront and finding some peace within yourself when you're in that space. But currently, my favorite park renovation project is Shannon Park in Rideau Heights. It's like something I never thought I would be able to be part of.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, well, what's great about it is it's part of a long-range community revitalization effort. So it's not just a park renovation. It was literally changing the entire community. And this has been going on for about 7 or 8 years right now, since the idea sort of first got its genesis. And the community revitalization plan covers the reorganization of the public housing in Rideau Heights to take it to modern conventions for its success. And then it also includes the reorganization of parkland parcels, the actual real estate, the lands moved and changed, and we built a new public street, essentially through the park, so that park would then have much more public street frontage. It was 50 years old, and it had very limited visibility, and it was a stagnant public space and not a particularly successful one.
Okay.
For 50 years, it was like that, more than 50 years. So this new public street is called Macaulay.
Okay.
And the Macaulay Street existed for a long time, but we made it go through all the way to the next public street over. Mm-hmm. And at the same time as that planning was occurring, the city built a community center and a library on the existing public school site, right in the same location. And the public school site was really an interesting partnership, because we are now putting those public services in one hub. And that's a really, really common and popular thing to do, because it's efficient. Mm-hmm. It costs less money in the long run for all. The school didn't need to build a new big gymnasium, and vice versa. The city was able to find some land for a library.
Right.
And the community center. So that hub project happened. The park project started right on its heels as part of the same contract. And it's almost 20 acres, and it's bound by public streets on 3 sides now.
Okay.
So before, there were a couple of spots you would look past an old 1960s arena that was functioning basically as a community center, that's been since removed. Public housing has been moved, and now we have visibility on about 80% of the street frontage of the entire park. So you feel really, really safe in that park. That's called passive surveillance. We call it eyes on the park.
Okay.
That's probably one of those ingredients that we talked about to make a space really successful. That's one of those ingredients that people don't really kind of know until they're there. And then they're like, I feel really great here. I feel like, my kids can play and I can be here. And there's really so someone keeping an eye on me. So I feel like I'm involved.
Gotcha.
And it'll be much more successful over time because of that. We also dealt with drainage improvements and pathways. So this park was functioning like a storm pond during major storm events. It had a channel in the middle that would overflow, and it was impossible to actually get across as a pedestrian. And historically, kids would walk to school through the park, and they would have to span this channel of knee-deep water on a plank. And they'd often not make it, or the plank wouldn't be there one day, and they would, many, many times for decades, the kids would be wet.
Yeah.
All day long in the middle of the winter. So, we've changed that drainage. We've built it so that it will hold the water. We've turned that into a natural space that's it's really quite beautiful. And we've also added pathways with lights, the big, broad, wide open space where people can walk, and people feel safe walking through that space now, we hope. And of course, they don't have to get their pants wet.
Sure, yeah. Definite bonus.
Yeah, so I think that's one of the biggest moves. We've got another pathway system that's in this park that's new as well, that jumps off of the sort of traditional commuting route through the park and adds a big loop system that you can use to get to all the amenities in the park, but also for exercise, recreational walking, running, and even if you're rolling on a scooter or on a mobility device.
There's no need for mall walking. We have an amazing environment here to do that.
Yeah, it's still Canada, So
Indeed.
When it gets cold,
at the moment,
you go in the community center and you walk the community center. We've got a gymnasium and a hall. Yeah, it's a hallway system. It's great.
Awesome.
The new amenities in the park itself, the sort of things that you kind of you promote a little more vividly, are a basketball court and a soccer field and a softball diamond. We've got new play equipment with our first zip line styled track play feature in the whole city. So you can actually ride this thing from one side of the playground to the other side on a Palma, and it's really, really exciting. So if you want to do that, go to Shannon Park.
I can speak as a father that I still like look at some parks with envy, going, "Man, I wish my kid was younger," because and it looks really cool.
Yeah. Well, I've used this thing and it's a hoot. And my
You can verify that.
10-year-old has used it and he loves it. So
Awesome.
yeah, for sure. I would check that out. And we've got a skate park and splash pad and a shade shelter.
Great.
Community gardens. There's a future tennis and pickleball court plan for the park. And sort of as a campus, the school and the library and the community center and the park all work together like magic. And we finished that project last year, and you can already see the trees growing up bigger, and it's pretty impressive public space. I'd highly recommend anyone go check it out and spend a few hours out in Shannon Park.
That is absolutely amazing. It must be so awesome to walk by or walk through or be in a project like that you've seen for, that you've watched and that you've participated in and see it come to fruition. It must be an amazing feeling.
Yeah. What's exciting about Shannon Park, I guess, is for me, is it's really, really, really unusual to move around properties. That's a very, very, very rare circumstance. Once the land is kind of set, you really don't have that option very often. So for this to happen, where we had partnership with the housing agency and they were able to, work with the city to create new spaces. I mean, it was almost like starting from new and with modern conventions, which just it's just really, really exciting public space. People won't really understand that when they look at it now.
Right.
But over time, we think it will have, like we said, that generational kind of change effect.
A lot of your team's work is about upgrading the parks that we have by doing things such as replacing infrastructure like play structures or tennis courts, or adding enhancements like splash pads and so on, a lot of what you just mentioned. But I understand Kingston will soon have one of its first totally new community parks, like really the first in a couple decades. Can you tell us more about that? That's super exciting.
Yeah, I'd be pleased to. You're talking about Cat West Community Park, the Cataraqui West Community Park project. It's almost 15 acres, and it's located at Holden Street in Woodhaven, which is a street that runs north-south off of Catwoods Drive, maybe about half a kilometer to the west of Bay Ridge Drive.
Okay.
And it's the first time we're ever in decades, able to take a raw piece of land of this size and turn it into a brand new public space. Like you said, we're often renovating existing parks. With Shannon Park, we were very, very lucky to change around a lot of the land configuration, but it was a piece of land that was there before. So it wasn't like we were adding 20 new acres to Rideau Heights. In this case, we're adding 15 new acres of public land that nobody currently can use right now. So there's a lot of beautiful natural amenities already in this piece of parkland.
Okay.
There's stands of woodland and broad meadows. There's oak trees and there's nut trees in there that are really quite remarkable.
And that was one of your recipes that had the landscape.
Yeah, so if you had a piece of land that was vacant and had been graded with bulldozers, you'd have to put all that in.
Yeah.
So in Cat West Community Park, there's a lot of beautiful natural amenities already in that parkland, such as stands of woodland and windrows and broad meadows that they were hoping to build off of, and then gently insert these new features for park use into that natural space. The results could be pretty exciting and quite unlike our other large, heavily used community parks in our area. We're hoping that the actual atmosphere of the Cat West Community Park will remember its sort of natural style. And the nice part about having a park that was left in a relatively natural condition is we already get a lot of grass and meadows and shrubs and mature trees into the space. That makes an absolutely enormous difference when the park is finished, because you essentially have a park where a lot of that landscape that makes a public space really high quality is instant.
Excellent.
So we're excited about that project. We're planning out a future pathway system in the area that will connect east and west through natural lands and utility corridors, and they all tie to this community park. Now, those pathways could take many years to build, but we'll be discussing them at the same time that we're discussing the community park.
Okay.
On the park side, the features proposed will be new pathways within the park, connecting to that bigger network. A playground, sports field, a splash pad, and sports courts. Basketball, tennis, possibly pickleball. A future skate park could be considered on this site. Now, there's an extra process for that, so that would be a few years later.
Okay.
But we'll talk to the community honestly about this site having that potential in the future. It's so similar to Shannon Park. I just really encourage people to go check out Shannon Park. We'll try and show some images of that when we do our public consultation. But it would really give people an idea of what the future Cataraqui Way West Community Park could be like. It'll take about 6 months to design, maybe a little longer, and about 2 years to build. It'll cost over $3 million. Which is one of our biggest community park construction projects budgets. And then if that budget is approved, the project would be ready late in 2024.
Okay. So how can, besides actually physically going to these sites, how can people learn more?
We're going to host some public consultation.
Oh, amazing. Awesome.
It's coming up in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
And there's a virtual meeting in July.
Okay.
We haven't pinned the date down, but stay tuned. But we suspect it's the second week of July. We're going to have promotional signage right on Catwoods Drive at the bottom of Holden Street. So anyone who's in that community will be able to see information about the park designs and the public session. We'll likely do a virtual public meeting.
Okay.
But we may do an open house in the Invista Center and show panels there as well where people can drop in and have a look.
Yeah.
We have a survey that'll go online and people can fill that out. They can participate in the public meeting. We'll take in feedback with our designers right away. And of course, you can always connect with the city staff leading the project.
Great.
Patricia Sharp is a landscape architect and a project manager at the City of Kingston, and she's in our engineering department, and she is always ready to receive information on these new projects.
Incredible. That's awesome. And we'll have all that information in the show notes. And so we'll have links to the Get Involved site, and we'll have everything that people need to get in contact with these projects. So, Neal, we can't thank you enough for joining us today. We go to parks to escape and have fun, and you mentioned so many other multiple purposes. It's good to know what goes into the recipe to actually make these very, very, very critical spaces in our community. Thank you again.
Thanks a lot.
Well, that's it from three people shut up in the Councillor's Lounge, and we're going to be soon that our appetites have been whetted by Neal's information about the parks to get out to a park and take a stroll. Our small but mighty team will be returning again next month with an all-new podcast. And in the meantime, why don't you listen to the podcast in the park like we suggested before? Take a selfie for yourself and tag us on your social media. We'd love to see it. Till then, get outside and get to a park. Talk to you soon.
Remember to subscribe and rate us wherever you get your podcasts. If you have a topic for a future episode, tell us more. Tweet at City of Kingston #tellmemore or send us an email at tellmemore@cityofkingston.ca. For more on this episode, visit cityofkingston.ca/podcasts. Tell Me More is produced by the City of Kingston's Communications and Customer Experience team.